It was supposed to be just another sunny afternoon at the country club, the kind of place where appearances mattered more than kindness, and everyone knew who belonged in. That's when she walked in. Dressed simply, with no designer, labels or flashy jewelry, she smiled politely, trying to find her place. But instead of welcome, she was met with whispers, judgmental glances, and stifled laughter. To them, she didn't fit in. A woman like her, humble, quiet, and unassuming, had no business being among the so-called elite. She did her best to stay out of the way, sitting quietly by herself near the garden terrace, sipping her lemonade while the others continued to gossip and glance her way. It wasn't the first time she'd been overlooked. She was used to blending in, to being the background in other people's stories. What they didn't know was who she really was, and who her husband happened to be. As the day went on and the whispers grew louder, some of the women began to approach her with fake smiles and sharp words wrapped in politeness. One even laughed and asked if she was lost or waiting for someone who actually had a reservation. But she didn't flinch. She just smiled, almost as if she knew something they didn't. And then it happened. A sudden rush of wind, heads turned, glasses rattled on the patio tables. A noise like thunder cracked overhead. A helicopter began descending onto the private helipad just beyond the golf course. Everyone stood in shock, shielding their eyes from the wind. And as the blade slowed and the door opened, no one could believe who stepped out, or who he had come for. You won't believe what happened next. The crowd froze, eyes wide, mouths slightly open. Country club members who just minutes ago were busy judging now stood in silence, watching the sleek black helicopter settle on the grass. It was the kind of entrance that no one there could have imagined, especially not for the woman they had just mocked. The man who stepped out was tall, confident, dressed in a tailored suit that looked effortlessly expensive. Sunglasses shaded his eyes, but his presence was enough to make heads turn. He walked with purpose, like someone used to being in control. And as he moved across the lawn, people started whispering again, but this time the tone had changed. Some recognized him from the news or business magazines. Others weren't sure who he was, but they could tell instantly he was someone important. And then, without hesitation, he made his way straight to her. The same woman who had been sitting quietly by herself, the one they laughed at, just Anne. Hour before, as he reached her, he smiled warmly, took her hand, and kissed her gently on the cheek. The crowd watched, stunned. There were no words exchanged, just that small, quiet moment that said everything. Still, no one could understand. Who was she, really? Why had she come dressed so simply? Why had she let them treat her like that? The questions started to bubble in people's minds, but none of them dared to ask out loud. She stood up beside him, still calm, still smiling. But now, everything about her felt different, stronger. The kind of quiet confidence that doesn't need to prove anything. As they walked toward the helicopter, heads still turned. No one could look away. But the truth behind their story and what brought them to this moment was still waiting to be revealed. As the couple made their way toward the helicopter, the silence behind them was thick with disbelief. No one moved. No one spoke. It was like the air had been sucked out of the country club. Some of the members, those who had smirked earlier, now wore expressions of confusion, even regret. But still, no one really knew who she was. Just that she had somehow gone from being the woman they mocked to the woman everyone suddenly wanted to know. Behind the scenes, whispers started to spread faster than wildfire. One member, Mr. Carlton, a longtime investor and one of the most respected voices at the club, leaned in to a friend and muttered, "That's Nathan Hale, the tech mogul. He's worth billions." A few gasps followed. Others pretended to know all along, but their curiosity only grew. What was she doing here alone? Why didn't she say anything? And how on earth had someone like her ended up married to him. But not everyone was just curious. Some felt threatened. Amanda, one of the club's most outspoken members, had been the first to mock her. She was furious, though she tried to hide it behind a forced smile. She had built her social status on appearances, influence, and being seen with the right people. And now, someone she had brushed off as just a plain woman had silently stolen the spotlight in one afternoon. It rattled her more than she cared to admit. Back near the bar, the club manager was quietly reviewing the guest list. He couldn't find her name anywhere. She had come in as a guest, but hadn't mentioned her husband or the fact that he might be arriving by helicopter. That kind of surprise was bad for business, but good for gossip. And there was still so much no one knew. The helicopter's blades spun slowly now, its engine humming like a heartbeat under the growing tension. Nathan turned to help her step inside, his hand resting gently at her back, and for a second, she paused. She looked out at the people who had stared through her just hours ago, unable to take their eyes off her. Some of them shifted uncomfortably. Others pretended to be on their phones, but most just stood frozen, caught in the moment. Then, out of nowhere, Amanda started walking toward them. Her heels clicked sharply on the stone path as she forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice just loud enough to carry. "I didn't get the chance to introduce myself earlier." Her tone was sweet, but her eyes held something else, pride mixed with panic. The woman turned calm as ever and smiled politely. Nathan stayed silent beside her, watching closely. Amanda continued, "We didn't know you were special company. Things might have gone differently if you'd just said something." She gave a soft laugh, as if trying to make light of the situation. But everyone could feel the tension between them, like a storm brewing under clear skies. The woman tilted her head slightly. "I didn't come here to impress anyone," she said, her voice quiet but steady. "I just came to enjoy the afternoon." The words landed heavier than anyone expected. Amanda blinked, caught off guard, and before she could respond, the woman turned back toward the helicopter. But the silence that followed was louder than any engine. People began whispering again, but this time with uncertainty, wondering not just who she was, but what else they had misjudged. And just as the door closed behind her, something happened that no one saw coming. Just as the helicopter door latched shut and the blades picked up speed, a black luxury SUV rolled up the private drive at the far end of the club. It wasn't scheduled. No one had seen it coming. The valet hesitated, unsure if it was even supposed to be there, but the tinted window slid down before he could say a word. A man in a crisp gray suit handed him a card, no words. Just a firm nod. Nan stepped out with purpose. Whispers began again, louder this time. Someone near the pool said they recognized him. Others weren't so sure. But within seconds, it became clear that this man wasn't just another guest. He wasn't here for golf or brunch. He was here with intent. He walked straight toward the helipad, calm but focused, ignoring the confused stares and awkward greetings from club members. Trying to seem important, the helicopter was seconds from liftoff when Nathan noticed him. His hand moved instinctively to stop the pilot. The woman, still seated beside him, looked puzzled as Nathan stepped back out, eyes narrowed, shoulders tight. The two men stood face to face, tension thick in the air. Nobody knew what was happening, but the sudden shift in Nathan's expression made it clear this wasn't a friendly visit. Then came the twist. The man in gray looked past Nathan, straight at the woman, and said her name. Not just her first name, her full name. It's the way someone says it when they've known you for a long time. His voice was steady, almost a calm. "You never told him the truth, did you?" Gasps rippled through the crowd like a wave. Inside the helicopter, her face changed. Not fear exactly, but something close. It's a kind of look that meant secrets were about to surface, and everything was about to change. For a long moment, no one moved. The helicopter's engine pulsed louder, but it couldn't drown out the tension on the ground. Nathan stared at the man in gray, jaw clenched, every part of him demanding answers. The woman inside the helicopter looked out the window, her face unreadable. Then, slowly, she opened the door and stepped down, heels pressing into the grass like she was stepping back into a past she hadn't planned to revisit. She looked between the two men, calm but clearly bracing herself. "I was going to tell you," she said softly to Nathan, "but I didn't know how." Nathan's eyes narrowed. "Tell me what?" The man in gray stepped forward. "That we were married until 3 years ago, and that she left without saying goodbye." His voice wasn't angry, just heavy, like a door that had been closed for too long. Gasps echoed again. Club members leaned closer, pretending not to listen while hanging on to every word. Amanda stood frozen, eyes wide, unable to process that. The same woman she had mocked now held the center of an unfolding drama fit for a movie. Nathan turned to her. "Is it true?" She nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "It was a painful chapter, one I tried to leave behind. He wasn't who he is now. I ran, and I never looked back. But I wasn't hiding, not from you." Nathan looked down for a second, hands on his hips, breathing deep. Then, without warning, he turned to the man. "So, what do you want?" The man in gray paused, then smiled faintly. "Nothing. I just wanted her to know I finally understand why she left." The woman looked stunned. Nathan reached for her hand, and she took it, as they turned back toward the helicopter. The man in gray walked away without another word, just when it seemed the storm had passed. Amanda stepped forward and said loudly, "You think this ends? Here, the club board's meeting tonight, and not everyone's thrilled about surprise landings." The woman paused, turned slightly, and said with a quiet smile, "Good. Let them talk." And with that, the blades roared back to life, lifting them above the crowd, leaving the judgment, whispers, and secrets below, as the helicopter lifted off. Rising above the neatly trimmed hedges and silent faces, there was a stillness left behind at the country club. Some members shuffled back to their drinks, trying to act unfazed, while others whispered with a new kind of curiosity. The simple woman they had mocked was no longer just a mystery. She had become unforgettable. Not because of wealth or reputation, but because she carried herself with grace even under pressure, never once needing to prove her worth. Inside the helicopter, she sat quietly beside Nathan, looking out the window as the green lawns faded beneath them. He didn't ask anything more. He just held her hand, firm and steady. Whatever her past had been, it didn't matter anymore. What mattered was the truth and the fact that she had chosen to face it. Rather than hide, the man in gray never returned to the club. Some said he had come for closure. Others guessed he wanted to make a statement. Either way, he left the same way he came, in silence, leaving more questions than answers. Amanda, still rattled, attended the board meeting that evening, but nothing came of it. The club quietly updated its policies on visitor arrivals, but no one dared speak the woman's name again. At least not aloud. In the days that followed, the story spread in whispers about the simple woman who turned heads without trying, who taught the club a quiet lesson about judgment and pride. She never posted about it, never made a scene. She just lived her life with a quiet strength that stayed with those who saw it, and in the end, the message was clear. Real elegance needs no approval, and sometimes the most unforgettable people are the ones you overlook at first glance.